Topic, you give me the topic, and the topic for this month is communicating love. The first line that I had written is that love is always communicating itself. That's the first line in my notes. And as I was sitting in the chair, and I continued to open my mind and heart, I could experience directly the love being communicated. As Denise sang, I knew that every word that she sang, which behind that, her getting up there and singing, there's a long legacy before she got to that moment. That somewhere in the past, there was an intention to share love. And it's been moving and expressing itself for years through many different ways. And this morning, we were direct recipients of this expression of love. And the same with Carolyn. She's been to ministerial school. This is Reverend Carolyn. She's had all these classes that she's been to and many nights awake, but it was all somewhere sourced back with, I want to communicate love. And so regardless of how many classes or singing things that they've taken, this was it. This sitting and creating this space and allowing us to be here, this was the love in each one of you. As I felt your presence, I knew that each one of you was here for some reason. My stepdaughter here, Laura's here, and she's here because she wants to spend time with her dad. That was an intention of love that created her, spending money and taking care to get here and doing all this stuff. And my husband often comes with me, and he comes with an intention of love to support me. And the Rosemarys and all of you are here because you're communicating love. I mean, if you were like really sour or something, you could just stay home and say, well, I'm going to watch Star Trek this morning or something like that. But everyone was here because the intention was to communicate love. And love has two sides, the communication. There's a giving and there's a receiving. So the communication is not just giving, it's also receiving. So we're the great recipients this morning of the communication of love. Unfortunately, too often in life, we don't set aside an attention span like we do when we come somewhere at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, because our minds are set with the intention that, okay, I'm intentionally here, I'm going to experience love, I need to fuel my tank. But the same love that is here is moving 24/7. It's always around, it's always present. And it's present to such a degree that when spiritual people, saints, and we were all spiritual people, but very intentionally spiritual people like yogis and yoginis and people who are meditating, and so they begin to experience deep, deep levels of this love. And it's called Ananda. And I'm sure you've heard the stories about these people that are in such bliss that they only can just meditate. Because when everything in our senses is receptive to love, that means that if I have nothing between me and a word that I hear, and when I say nothing, that means no conceptualization. If I hear a word in the stillness of my mind, and it's the first time, as if it is the first time, in other words, I'm hearing it new, and I don't have anything, this means this means that, what it does is there is a direct love vibration. It hits us like love. And what the people do that meditate and are very quiet is that they have rolled away all their preconceived notions about what stuff means, and when you roll all that away, the only thing that's really left is love. But what we love to do is we love drama, and we call our lives drama. And it has to do with talking about things that are non-reality, things that are not germane to the present. And there's not anything wrong with that. That's the contraction of the energy. There's the expansion and there's the contraction. There's the expansion and the contraction. But unfortunately, we often get too caught in the contraction of life. We don't let it roll out into this blissful experience that's love. Many people have talked about how much, in order to have love, we need to desire it as much as someone who's been held underwater without being able to breathe for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and when they come up, that's all they want is air. And in order, our desire needs to be that big. In order to experience that love directly, we need to have that as an all-burning desire. But it's not for many people. For some people, there's this deep yearning, and there's a difference. For some people, it's a deep yearning. For other people, it's just a tiny little nag. And when it's the nagging, what happens is that people cover it up with materialism. A new car, a new hairstyle, it's covered up with all kinds of things. And fortunately, for most of us, when we've covered that nagging up with everything materially that we can conceptualize and all kinds of relationships, and we strip that away, we're ready to experience the yearning for what it is we really want, which is our identity, which is love. So I'd like to talk about 5 ways to communicate love to others, and these ways of communication they're not black and white. And once I tell you this, it doesn't mean if you go out and do these things, it'll guarantee love. These are just suggestions and guidelines to open your mind to the possibilities of some things that you might do. And when I'm talking about communicating love in the physical, I'm not talking about the transcendent love that's always present. I'm talking about physically, when we're more contracted and we experience ourselves in relationship with people, how do we communicate to them in a way that is consistent with what it is that we think we're about and who we are? And so the first thing is to offer people, everyone you see, offer them a kind word. And this is such a trite sounding thing, but it's a very powerful thing, because if I were to be with someone, let's say I walk up to Rosemary, and instead of figuring out what it is that I can tell Rosemary about myself or what I might be able to get from Rosemary, suppose my thought is, how can I love Rosemary? And it's not how can I get something, it's how can I give something? And that takes me out of my focus on me, and it puts me on Rosemary. Now, of course, you know that it can go the other way around. We can be other-centered, and we can never know who we are and take care of it. But there is a space and time where it's time for me to not be focused on myself and to see Rosemary. Now, how many of you have done that? You have intentionally been with someone and you've opened your heart to be with them, really be present, and to give a kind word. Have you had that practical experience? And the reason that I ask you that is that if you have had that experience, you know that's why the Course in Miracles says giving and receiving are the same. Because when you give that experience, what happens? It's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was doing them a favor, and here I am just immersed in this love. It's not a giving up. Giving and giving up are not the same thing. Because like with love, the more you give, the more there is. It's not something that can be diminished. The second part of this, whether you are just doing this with someone that you just pass by or someone that you're with, is to be totally present when you're with the person. The art of being present with ourselves is almost lost these days, much less the art of being present with someone else. But we do know what it's about, and that is when we're with somebody that we're not texting, that we're not on the phone, that we're not thinking about what it is that we've got to do when we leave, but it's fully being present. Have you been with someone who was present with you and felt that? Does it not feel like love? It's like the heart just warms when someone is present with you. And another aspect of that, to take it even one step further with presence, and that is to listen wholly when we're with someone. To be fully there and listen without judging what they're saying, without trying to fix what they're saying, without trying to change what they're saying or solve what they're saying. Just being fully present with them. Years ago, I attended a 12-step meeting, and after the meeting, we would go out for dinner or lunch. And I started speaking. It was a circle, and everyone was listening intently to me. I was taken aback. I almost didn't know what to say because I was so used to begging for who I was with to be present with me that I just didn't know what to say. And I told another friend about that, and she told me, yes, I was in a therapy group one time, and everybody was fully present when I spoke. And she said, and I didn't know, I couldn't speak. Because we're so used to having to shout to be heard. And I don't mean literally shout. But we speak and people don't hear. How many times have you been with somebody and they say, how are you doing? And you say, well, I'm doing really great today. And you might say, well, how are you doing? And they say, I'm doing great. And then they go, how are you doing? I've had somebody say to me in a row 4 times, how are you doing? And I don't know how to react. It's because we're so not present. We're so not listening. We're so zoned out. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but with awareness, and I'm talking about the kind of I'm aware that I'm doing something. There's a bigger awareness that holds that awareness. But I am aware that I am with you, and I am aware of what you're saying. It's a beautiful gift, a beautiful communication of love. The next way of communicating love is to keep our commitments. If we say we're going to be somewhere. My daughter says when she meets her friends and they're going to be 20 minutes late, they know. Because Elizabeth, my daughter says, well, look, 20 minutes to me is that I could have taken a shower, I could have done this, I could have done that. And so 20 minutes was a big deal for me, and I've rushed and given up something so I can meet you on time. And she says, my friends know that they're going to be on time or they better call and have a good excuse. And that's the way it should be with all of us. Because if we say we're going to be somewhere, it really discounts people to be on time. Now, if there's a meeting and there's not an agreed upon thing, then that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, I will meet you at 9:30 at the library. Let's be there at 9:30. I had a friend that we were courting each other. You know how it is when you're getting to know someone and you meet for lunch or maybe you go for a walk. And we had been together maybe 2 or 3 times. And we had an appointment like at 9:30 in the morning to walk. And I waited and I waited. I waited 30 minutes. I had no cell phone call, nothing. And she arrived and she said, well, I had this unexpected thing happen, that I'm not working and I'm looking for a job, and this business thing came up, and I just had to take care of it. And I just thought to myself, well, she'll just have to understand. And that's all she said. She never said, I'm so sorry. She didn't say, well, the conversation was such that I couldn't stop and call you. There was nothing. Or she didn't say, I'll call when she got in the car. There was none of that. Well, maybe I could overlook that. Maybe I should. And sometimes if the friends had been, if I had known the person longer, we could have worked through that. But what really happened with that relationship, I never saw her again. Because I didn't take what it took to call her up and set an appointment, and she didn't do it with me. Because I take responsibility. If I want a friend, I'm going to call them up, none of this. Will you give me a call next week? I mean, that's totally unconscious. I'm not going to do something like that. If I want to be with somebody, I will call them, and I will take the effort to do that. But I never did that with her. And that was because she didn't keep that commitment, because we build relationships with people through trust. And without keeping our commitments, there is no trust. And without trust, it's like we've got one eye open all the time when we're around the person, wondering when they're going to not do what it is they said they were going to do. We can't relax in their presence. There's a place in a relationship, friends relationship, any kind of relationship, and when something clicks and you can trust the person, you don't rush up to them and say, oh, I love you, you're really now my great friend. But you know that there's something in you that can totally trust that person with who you are. And there's a relaxation in the body. And when you see them, you know that when they come in the room, they're your friend, and you can just go, oh, this is great. And that's because love is easily and freely communicated. I've alluded to this one before, but it's like when we're with someone not trying to get something from that person. I was looking at my husband the other day. It was funny. And I thought, I'd probably love him more if he was very wealthy and debonair and he was a good dresser. And it was so funny. And I said, but this is really funny, because now this is my ego talking, obviously. And so I thought, but he's just my equal. I mean, what can you get out of that? way the ego does, because have you ever been with somebody you thought you could get something from because they were the top of the field that you were in, or they were so smart, or they're so well-spoken, so it's kind of like, let me get around you and I can absorb some of your importantness. I'll be important like you. But it's like really being able to be with people as our equals and being there instead of the ego always strategizing to figure how we can get something from somebody, more time, more attention, more whatever, more compliments. Maybe if they would just say, I love you the right way, and maybe write a love poem or do something like that, then things would just be chipper, just great. And if we look at the category of what the ego thinks it needs to have a good life, at one point or the other, we've gotten every bit of it. And how much difference did it make? It didn't make any difference. Because it all goes to pass. The only thing in love really that counts is right here and right now. But it's not, as I say, the here is not here, not at 11:45. The here is something much bigger. It's something that holds everything. It's an infinite stillness is here. Infinite stillness. And the last point in terms of communicating love, and this is, I'm going to say it's the most important one, maybe it's not, but that is to like the person. Because regardless of what we're doing when we're talking to them, if we don't like them, for example, we can love a person and we can be in love with them, but in the moment, if I'm really angry and upset with the person, and I'm not saying don't get angry and upset with the person, but if I'm trying to communicate with love, I've got to get that internal reality fixed in some way. I've got to let go of that anger or upset, because I can't communicate love. We put these vibes out. And people, especially the people that are closest to us, boy, they really know what those vibes are like. But everybody does. You can walk in the room and you can tell whether somebody's open, whether they're not talkative. You can tell. We put out these, they're preoccupied. We can tell. So if we're not liking the person when we're with them, and this is how subtle it is. You think, oh, well, I like everybody. That is it. I can be with my good friend and I can think, man, her stove is dirty. Why didn't she clean that up? I don't understand how anybody could live like that. See, we're thinking we're liking the person, but the internal dialogue in our head is really not doing that. It's like, how could the person have such a dirty car? How could the person wear that outfit? Doesn't the person know that this went out of style and such and such and such and such? I mean, just all of the things, that's the internal dialogue. That when we have it, we're not liking the person. So in order to communicate love, we have to pay attention to that internal dialogue and then not be upset with ourselves because we have it. My favorite saying when I watch my mind have an internal dialogue about something is, that's just what the mind does. The mind has gone out for a walk today, and it's talking about all these crazy, inconsequential things. And it's like, okay, little honey, just go on back and let's be present. Let's be present. I have seen my mind go out for a walk when I'm around a friend and it's in very tacky territory. And I notice that it's there. And I walk my consciousness back into the present. And I remember who that person is. And I fall so in love with that person that I want to cry. And of course, the person that I'm talking to is just like hanging out. They have no idea that I've moved from this hell to this samadhi place when I'm with them. And really, if you have been with a person and see, whenever we touch, when we really touch, we greatly communicate love. And this often happens, unfortunately, when we fall in love. You know, that heart chakra opens and you feel what it's like. But that kind of love is just available constantly if we touch someone. It's readily and available. But like I'm saying, we walk our minds away from it. Every morning we just take it and walk in all different crazy directions. And when we get conscious, then we quit taking our minds for a walk in those crazy directions. And it's like, pew, here, back. Yes. Silence. And it's not trying to retrain the mind or get it to do mind tricks. Okay, I'm going to get you to do positive tricks. You're going to do positive mind tricks. Now you're going to think only good thoughts. Yes, 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 yes. Or, oh, there's a negative trick. Come back. No, so we try to teach it all these tricks like a bad dog. And it's like, no, it's about letting the mechanisms of the mind go at a deep level and not being so fascinated by the thoughts we have and not thinking that the thoughts we have are who we are. It's good to know that I can talk a lot because I actually have a whole nother section on loving yourself, but I think that if you got this, then you've had it, huh? I think you got enough with this. I don't think I'm going to tell you about loving yourself because this, I mean, how can you really separate the love of yourself with the love of others? I was not looking for an answer to that question. In case you were thinking, because really what love is like this. If this is love, then you are the finger. It's the same love, different fingers. So can you imagine if this finger and this finger got in a fight? That's what it's like when we get in a fight with somebody else, because this is who we are love, and this is how we present ourselves. We're connected to the source of love, and these are our individual lives and bodies, and so then the finger, but it's totally ridiculous because we're love. I mean, we're all the same thing, individually presenting ourselves as bodies, as agendas, as minds, and so forth. So if I tell you anything that I talk to you about what this and this do, it's no different than this and this. So I'd like to close with a poem from Rumi, and this poem is a poem on love. It's a little tricky. It's on two sheets of paper. There's one other thing I wanted to do. I want to recommend a movie. And the movie is called The Letter Writer. But in terms of communicating love, it's about a man who's an older man, and he writes a letter. I think he writes one every day. And he writes it just from his heart. It's like, what does somebody really need to know? He looks up somebody, he has a phone book, and every day he writes a letter to the next person on the list, and then he delivers it in his town. And the person never knows who it comes from, but he only uses his heart to write the letter. And the story tells about how this has changed so many people's lives. So in terms of communicating love, that's a beautiful movie. I want to recommend it. It's called The Letter Writer. Here's a poem by Rumi. Rumi happened a long time ago in the body. Love is reckless, not reason. Love is reckless, not reason. Reason seeks a profit. Love comes on strong, consuming herself unabashed. Yet in the midst of suffering, love proceeds like a millstone, hard-surfaced and straightforward. Having died of self-interest, she risked everything and asked for nothing. Love gambles away every gift God bestows. Without cause, God gave us being. Without cause, give it back again. So be it.